All right, let's dive right in. We are going to tackle one of the biggest, most mind-bending questions out there. What is consciousness? Seriously, it's a mystery that touches literally everything. And today, we're going to explore a really radical new theory that just might, hold the key.
I mean, just stop and think about it for a second. Why does the color red look red to you? Or, why does the sad song actually feel sad? Why is there this private, internal movie playing in your head that is you being you? It's the mystery we're all living inside every single moment of our lives. And this very question, this mystery, is what philosophers and scientists call the hard problem. Look, explaining how the brain processes information, that's the easy part. Relatively speaking, of course. The truly maddeningly difficult part is explaining why all that number crunching and neuron firing should be accompanied by the rich, subjective feeling of seeing red. So how does this new theory even begin to solve it? Well, here's our game plan. First, we'll pin down the problem. Then, we'll introduce a wild idea that comes, believe it or not, from nothingness itself. We'll see how it creates this incredible dance inside the brain, put it head-to-head with the other big theories out there, and finally, land on a conclusion that's pretty mind-blowing. Okay, first up, the consciousness problem. Let's be super clear. We are talking about one of the last great frontiers of science. This is a puzzle that has left the smartest people on the planet scratching their heads for centuries. And into this huge intellectual arena steps a bold, new contender, dynamic vacuum field theory. Or let's just call it DVFT for short. So what on earth is DVFT? Well, get this. The theory says consciousness isn't just something the brain makes on its own. Instead, it suggests the brain acts more like a really sophisticated antenna, or maybe a sculptor. It takes something that's already everywhere, the fundamental field of the vacuum of space, and organizes it into the very patterns that become our conscious experience. So how would that even work? Well, the theory breaks it down into 3 basic steps. First, the foundation. You have to stop thinking of the vacuum of space as empty. Instead, picture it like a perfectly still cosmic ocean. It's this fundamental field that fills everything. Second, the organizer. Your brain, with all its electrical activity, is like a super complex pattern of ripples and disturbances on the surface of that ocean. And third, this is the magic part, the result. Consciousness happens when all those billions of tiny brain-made ripples suddenly synchronize, locking together into one massive, coherent wave that spans the entire brain. All right, part 3, the brain's vacuum dance. So how does the brain actually pull off this trick, turning all that chaotic noise into a single, unified experience? Okay, the magic word here is synchronization. Imagine you have a billion tiny metronomes inside your head, all ticking away at their own random pace. That's kind of like your brain's baseline, chaotic activity. DVFT says that consciousness is the moment when all those metronomes suddenly and spontaneously start ticking in perfect unified time. They create one single rhythm. And this isn't just some vague idea. You can actually model it. What you're seeing here is something called the order parameter. It's just a number that tells us how synchronized everything is. 0 is total chaos, 1 is perfect harmony. So at the very beginning of the simulation, the system is a mess. It's way down at 0.417. This is the brain's default, unconscious state. But then, boom. Look what happens. Almost instantly, the whole system just clicks into place. The order parameter shoots up to a perfect 1.0. Absolute, total synchronization. All those little individual parts have locked together into a single, coherent state. DVFT argues that this is it. This rapid jump is the physical event that flips the on switch for consciousness. And here's the crucial part. It's not just a fleeting blip. It's stable. A moment later, the system is still holding at an incredibly high level of coherence, 0.938. This sustained global harmony, the theory says, is the physical basis for our smooth, continuous stream of consciousness. It's why one moment feels connected to the next. So now for the big question. We have this really elegant idea of a synchronized dance in the vacuum. But how does DVFT actually stack up against the other heavy hitters in the world of consciousness theories? Let's find out. First up to the plate, we've got global workspace theory. Now, this theory pictures consciousness like a spotlight on a theater stage. Whatever information is in that spotlight gets broadcast to the whole audience, the rest of the brain. DVFT actually likes that idea of a broadcast, but it says, hold on, the stage isn't some special part of the brain. The stage is the universal vacuum field itself.
Next, let's look at attention schema theory. This one's pretty clever. It suggests that what we call consciousness is really just the brain's internal, simplified model of its own process of paying attention. But for DVFT, attention isn't the star of the show. It's just one instrument in a massive orchestra. Consciousness is the conductor that brings all the instruments, attention, memory, emotion, together into one symphony. And finally, the famous or infamous OR theory. This theory goes deep, saying consciousness comes from quantum computations happening inside the tiny little skeletons of our neurons. Now, DVFT doesn't throw quantum mechanics out the window, it just sees those effects as background noise, like tiny breezes on a giant ocean wave. It doesn't rely on some special, exotic quantum mechanism for the whole thing to work. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? You can see so clearly how different their starting points are. DFT starts from the bottom up, with fundamental physics. GWT and AST are more top-down, starting with how the brain is organized. And OR just dives right down into the weird world of quantum gravity. They all have completely different foundations, and because of that, totally different mechanisms. Okay, final section, mind as matters dance. Let's pull back and look at the big picture. What does a theory like this ultimately say about us, about the nature of the mind itself? I think this quote from the research just says it perfectly. Consciousness is brain-originated but vacuum-enabled. Mind as matter's sophisticated dance. What that gives us is this beautiful picture where there's no separate mind and body. The mind isn't a ghost in the machine. It originates in the physical stuff of the brain, but it's enabled by the most fundamental field in the entire universe. It's all just matter, performing an incredibly complex and beautiful dance.
So why does all this matter? Well, the implications are just huge. For one, it offers a way to solve the hard problem by basically saying our feelings, our qualia, are the physical dynamics of this field. It gives us a unified picture of the minds that doesn't need any mysticism. Crucially, it's a real scientific theory. It makes predictions you can actually go out and test. And maybe most profound of all, it connects our inner, subjective world directly to the fundamental fabric of the cosmos. And that brings us to one last, really mind-bending thought to leave you with. If consciousness is, at its core, just a certain kind of complex, synchronized pattern in a universal field, then it forces us to ask a pretty radical question. Could other complex systems, not just biological brains, but maybe one day even incredibly advanced AI, could they learn to perform the same dance? And if they could, what else out there might one day wake up?